We're also scaling civic engagement. And the reason? Kansans were clear. We want kids that give back to their community and to other people. End of discussion. We want kids that give back to their community and other people.
What was so exciting, or probably caught Randy and I off guard when we worked with K-State to help us analyze all that tour data, was the communities that we met with, and then we met with business and industry separate. This one here, identical. Of all the things that they said, this one here alone was identical. Business and industry. So, and I've used this several times when a parent calls and says, can my high school require my student to have 40 hours of community service for graduation? Now, because I get that every year. And I say, number one, yeah, they can. Well, the state doesn't require it. You're right, but the local can. But now I can say, in businesses across this state, said kids being civically engaged was extremely important. And typically the parents go, well, okay, I was just asking. But you know, some parents don't want this. But now you can say, hey, our businesses want it. So that's why we're doing it.
So when in all these areas that we don't necessarily have a test to give, we're trying to scale for you what it would look like at the top level to be a civically engaged school, so that if you want to go after that, you can. All right. And so let me just share with you a few things that you may or may not know. We're 6th in the country with number of juveniles in juvenile detention centers. 6th. That's good. I would not have realized that. 6th. I think this is interesting. Do you know that 73% of Kansas prison populations are made up of people that have less than a high school education? And here's what's interesting. A GED doesn't matter. All right? When we look, what matters is a high school diploma. GED or dropout are about the same as it relates to prison. 73% of the prison population did not graduate from high school or have only a GED. In this state, we spend, you know, the dollar amounts to educate, the cost of putting someone in prison is $24,000. So when the Juvenile Justice Act came in, that was the data they were looking at, saying we're sending way too many kids to juvenile detention centers. We're sick. We want to be, you know, like 50th. We're 6th. We have too many kids that are going to juvenile detention centers. So when Brad and I look at restorative justice things that are like going on in Shawnee County, we're saying, how do we scale that? You know, basically it's kids that are in trouble, and Shawnee County's gone together and said, here's what we're going to do with those kids, and here's how we're going to impact them. We're going to take them out of the school environment because it's not safe probably, and then we're going to reintroduce them back in the environment while we're still moving them toward graduation and getting some things done. So I just thought that was interesting. Look at this. We're 41st in voter turnout for local elections, 38th in doing favors, but I want to focus on this 41st. Go back to Betsy DeVos and Dina Horst or Ken Willard. We're 41st out of 50 states in the percent of people that turn out to vote. We ought to be ashamed about that. And you wonder why we get the people in Topeka that we get, right? 41st in the country. This is the Kansas Civic Health Index in 2016. So it's okay if Peabody Burns, that Ron and the staff say we're going to require that every kid do some community service. Now, what would be ideal if it's in their plan of study how they want to do it, right? Because community service, I remember when I served on the Red Cross board. Red Cross is a wonderful organization, and I served on the board. But my passion wasn't that. I wanted to do something else. So I served, but find out what it is that you know your passion is and giving back to others.
You know, Randy, I don't have the data. I make up a lot of stuff. But I'll bet you on that last slide, I will bet you Kansas ranks in the top 5 in the country with communities that support their local schools. But we're terrible about going to the polls. And I think recently Main Street, Kansas started getting a little tired of what was going on in Topeka and changed that a little bit. But I know in every one of your communities, again, made it up, 95% of your community supports you, loves you, and will do it, but we're just terrible about going to the polls.
So here's kind of how we're looking at it. The base of this, you're a personally responsible citizen. Basically, you have character, you don't steal, you don't commit crime, and you're law-abiding members. You vote. That's just the base. We'd like for you to move to be participatory. You participate and take leadership positions, establish systems. And yes, the top is you challenge the system. You question the system. We don't like those kids sometimes in school because they ask us hard questions about how we run school. But we really want that. I was spending some time with Blue Valley, I'm going to say Northwest. They're one of the Blue Valley schools is state champs with We the People. So I was with those kids the other day, and wow, what a great discussion. Their topic this year is immigration. And they had to argue about immigration policy, and they were arguing those in front of judges and attorneys, like a Supreme Court argument where they just interrupt you. These kids were sharp. They could engage. They disagreed, but they did so respectfully. And if you watched the hearing of the House K-12 budget last Thursday, you saw, I think, democracy at its best. You saw people not agree. You saw votes split, but you saw an in-depth 8-hour discussion respectfully, and they moved a bill forward together. That hasn't been true in Kansas in the last 5 or 6 years, right? So this is what we're after as we look at civic engagement. We're going to be giving you rubrics. So again, you know, if we want to look at Anthony Harper and say, well, what if I wanted to be here? What would it that I would want to do? We can say, here's some things to think about. And you may want us to start here. So we're working on that you'll make the decisions about how engaged you want your kids. But right now, we're giving 2 or 3 awards every year on schools of character. That's great. We'd like to scale that even broader so that, you know, kids give back and that they're responsible.